Dr. Price, Aaron J. emails me and says, "Hey Derek, it's me again. I've got new questions I'd like to ask. You've talked before about Zoroastrian influence on Jewish and Christian beliefs, but I'd like to ask about Zoroastrianism itself. These questions are for anyone that knows enough about it to speak on it, although I'm admittedly partial to Dr. Price. I'd like to ask, what do we know about the variety of different branches in this religion? Was it as diverse as Christianity once was? What sects and denominations were there, and how much did they deviate from the teachings that appear to have been predominant or orthodox? Since it is an Aryan religion like Hinduism, or Aryan.
Aryan is correct.
Yeah, religion like Hinduism, did they have a concept of rebirth, reincarnation, which is the central teaching of the Indian religions? And if so, how prevalent was it? Was there perhaps even such a thing as non-dual Zoroastrianism? The existence of Zervanism seems to indicate something like this, from what little I know. Dr. Price.
Yeah, the big problem with this is that the Zoroastrian scriptures are in such disarray. It's never been settled as to what was written before or after what else. So when you try to, but if it's pretty clear there was an evolution of the religion, it's just tough to know at what stage. And the way I think most people think of it these days is that originally there probably was one chief god. I think, Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, and that he may have been very likely the Vedic Varuna, who was sort of displaced as the chief god in the Veda by Indra, the great warrior god, like Baal or Thor and so on. And so originally, apparently, Ahura Mazda was the chief deity, and he had two sons, Angra Mainyu and Spenta Mainyu. Angra Mainyu was the spirit of darkness, and Spenta Mainyu, if I've got this right, was the spirit of light, and the two of them were battling with what result I don't know. But at least on this issue of theism, it looks like what they eventually did was to identify Spenta Mainyu, the good one, with Ahura Mazda, also called Ormuzd, just sort of a contraction of this. And so now you had dualism, that there were two co-eternal and equally powerful deities. And for a while, for eons, they were ignorant of each other's existence. But somehow, Angra Mainyu, who is also known as Ahriman, and henceforth, I think, he became aware of Ahura Mazda and decided to attack and to defend himself. Ahura Mazda decided to create the world, knowing that Ahriman would try to vandalize and destroy it, and it would be a trap. And so he first created the spiritual creation, which were the heavenly sort of Platonic prototypes of all earthly things, including the spiritual originals of human beings who were called Fravashis. And that seems to have been based on like the Valkyries. I don't know what they called them, but it was the same idea, the warrior maids who gathered the dead. And there were other prototypical creations. Well, then he asked all of the Fravashis if they would enlist as his warriors in the coming war against Ahriman? And they said yes, and so they had to have bodies to do this in the world. And so there was one original human being, Gaiamard, the primal man, who was like one of the ones in Plato's Timaeus, I think. He was like Humpty Dumpty, and sort of a spheroid with two pairs of everything. During the initial assault, the demons ruled by Ahriman attacked Gaiamard, thinking to nip the human race in the bud, and split him down the middle, which was a big mistake because now there were two who could mate and fill the world with humans and be the vessels of the Frabashis, the spirits. And because of this, they evolved the most profound notion of angels that passed on into Judaism and Christianity and Gnosticism, namely that you have a spirit double, a higher self, that you are trying to, a divine spark that you're trying to unleash. And when you do, you would join with this being in a heavenly marriage. And that's what the various Gnostics did. They had the sacrament of the bridal chamber, and so forth. Well, so from this point on, they developed a periodization of history, like dispensationalism. And they said it was, there were going to be 4 periods of 3,000 years each. The first one was the period of the creation and the initial assault by Ahriman. But Ahura Mazda knocked them out into a coma by reciting the Zoroastrian equivalent of the Lord's Prayer. The mere recitation of it was enough to knock him out. And for 3,000 years, he's in this swoon, and his demons underneath the earth finally wake him up. And this includes basically a Lilith character. The first woman was like a demon whore. I think maybe that's what they call her. They wake him up, and then commences the great war on earth among humans aligned with either side. This is inaugurated when the prophet Zoroaster is recruited by Vohumana. They believe that Ahura Mazda had 7 aspects that were sort of hypostases, kind of like Gnostic emanations, and that the greatest one was the archangel Vohumana, who appeared to Zoroaster as he was coming up out of the water after a purification rite. His father was a Vedic priest. And he gave him a cup of blazing liquid to drink, and he did, and that gave him the revelation of Ahura Mazda. And he said he wants you to go out and preach that he is the only God, or that counts anyway. And so Zoroaster's going to do it, but he's suddenly interrupted by Ahriman, who says, look, you don't want to bother with this. I can make you rich and plenty of groupies and so on. And he says, nothing doing. You can't dissuade me. I mean, it sort of sounds familiar. And so he goes out and begins to preach. Ahura Mazda gives him vindicating signs, just like when Moses goes before Pharaoh, a ball of fire that he holds and stuff like this. Oh, also there's a nativity story where Ahriman arranged to have baby Zoroaster tossed into a cave filled with wolves, but he's protected and so forth. Okay, he's preaching, and he manages through these miracles to convert Prince Vistashpa, who's the big wig there. And he is persecuted by the magi, the Persian priests and astrologers. In fact, they're the guys that throw him into the cave. But eventually they have to convert. but they still sort of resent it, and they're kind of closet magi anyway. And Zoroaster unwittingly ejaculates in a pond or a lake, which acts as a sperm bank and keeps his sperm alive for the duration of the 3,000 years. And every 1,000 years, a virgin, not knowing what this is, happens to bathe in this lake and gets impregnated, and by a descendant of Zoroaster, called a Zoroastrian, or a savior or a benefactor. And the last of these is a messianic character. And he brings the forces of good to their victory and raises the dead to face the final judgment, though in the meantime, they've been relegated to heaven and hell temporarily, which is kind of what Christians wind up saying, Sheol and Abraham's bosom and all that. And every soul is awakened once he's buried. And if his deeds have been evil, it's a beautiful woman, but if they've been bad, it's a hideous wench. And the demon Vistashpa comes and carries him away, and he has to walk the Chinvat bridge, the bridge of the separator, a knife edge over the pit of hell, which is called the House of the Lie. And if he tips over, that's it. But otherwise, you go to the House of the Song, which is their heaven. Now, the notion of this devil figure ruling over a subterranean realm, you have something like that in the Old Testament, but it's Molech. It's not the devil. That's a later thing. Anyway, once the Zoroastrian comes and resurrects the dead, they face the final judgment, and everybody is subjected to a bath of a flood of molten lead. If they're righteous, it feels like a bath of warm milk. If they're not, it feels like molten lead. But they're purified. All the evil is smelted out of them, and ultimately everybody is saved. That's the basic idea that everybody is fighting in every choice they make, whether they know it or not, on the side of good or evil, and it does make a difference. They know, as a matter of information, that Ahura Mazda will win, but it is a fight. And ultimately he's pretty much destroyed. This was an important theodicy, because they were saying, look, do we want a God who is powerful enough to eradicate evil, but he doesn't? That's problematical. We think it'd be better if he would do that if he could, but he can't. He's got a real fight on his hands, and he's going to win. That's not a bad trade-off. And so that was theologically very important. What was Zoroastrianism, though? That is understood by some to be a return to this very archaic form where you had Ahura Mazda and his two sons, one good and evil. Wherever they came up with them, they had Zervan, the Lord of eternal time. And now Ahura Mazda and Ahriman were his sons, and it was basically that again. But again, we're not really sure if that's the way it evolved. There's some other stuff. They had sacraments of Hauma, which seems to be the same as the Vedic Soma, and they had a fire ceremony and such. They think the Gathas, one of the early scriptures, was actually written by Zoroaster, but really, who knows? And
I thought it was interesting you mentioned either the really pretty bride or a hideous one. Is this like gift, afterlife gift that you see the Muslims do this, but they have 72 virgins. I'm just saying, it's like, you get given these brides, but I guess it's not equivalent. I was just thinking.
It's just a welcoming committee.
Oh, okay.
They symbolize your karma, you might say. The same thing happens in Tibetan Buddhism, where first you see the peaceful deities, glorious divine entities, but then if your karma, it doesn't make you astute enough to know what you're seeing, they turn into the wrathful deities with the tusks and the three eyes and all that stuff. And it's your karma. The person reading you the book says, recognize these as the projections of your own mind. That's amazing.
Yeah.
As far as I know, there isn't any reincarnation in Zoroastrianism because they have the final judgment, which you don't have in reincarnation religions. It's not cosmically cyclical either. It's a straight line. And that's, it seems to me, when Cyrus sent Ezra and Nehemiah and came up with a reconstituted Judaism that Jews who had never left the land couldn't brook, and they couldn't get along with them. Basically, what Cyrus was doing was imposing Zoroastrianism on Jews, because that's when you get Satan becoming Ahriman, you get an apocalyptic periodization of history, a messianic resurrector of the dead, etc., etc. I mean, where do you see this in the Old Testament? This is simply Jewish Zoroastrianism. Even the name Pharisee probably meant Parsi or Persian, which is what even today in India, the Zoroastrians are called Parsis.
Interesting.
Sorry to dump all this in there, but I did happen to know it and might as well.
This is the reason they asked. Thank you, Dr. Price.